G'day friends and fans, and welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate. Now, I am shocked as you are, that the lies behind feminism persist. Now, the four main lies that are making women miserable have been told to us now for 60 odd years, but people have not been listening. Now, 20 years ago, originally published in the Feminist, one woman spoke out, Suzanne Venker, and she has been speaking out ever since. The anti-feminist movement is not new, but it is small and is growing. Women are finally fed up. Now, 20 years ago, there was an event known as the Mummy Wars, where women everywhere were basically either feminist mothers or feminist mentors, and they were arguing over what makes a healthy marriage and a healthy family life. Well, feminism more and more turned against Western men and Western family traditions, embracing either single motherhood or humping any man with a skin tone darker than orange. The politics of feminism, of course, is all about hatred of the Western man. Anything to punish Western men for failing Western women. Now, of course, the messages that women have spread have produced nothing but misery. Dating in America is not just expensive, but it's a minefield. And it's all but dead, with marriages on the decline, and many asking themselves, why? Well, it's simple. And successive governments are to blame. They stood by and said, no, it's just free speech. Now they want to pass hate speech. Now, of course, Democrats want to pass hate speech laws. Yet they want to spread hate. So, lie one, women don't need men. This is directly from Gloria Steinem at the height of the 60s movement. You don't need man, you don't need children. Over time, of course, they were wrong. Women are biologically dependent on men. Most women wanted to be mothers. Most women liked being vulnerable and submissive. The problem is, when faced with social ostracism, they chose the mob. Research, in fact, shows that many women regret feminism and don't know what to do. Ultimately, they want family, but it is too late. They like the feeling of being safe and in good hands. Yes, financially, not just socially. The problem is, for most women, it's too late. Now, in 2019, hypergamy was a term being thrown around, and yes, it turned out a lot of feminists went off to marry rich men and went, ha ha ha, we got you girls. And now many feminists realize it was not just about tearing down men, it was about tearing down women. It was about a certain group like Gloria Steinem destroying the competition for university, CEOs, access to rich men. And you see this time and time again. You're being played for suckers. But women haven't or learnt. Well, at least the majority haven't learnt yet. Where we're told constantly that line number 2. We are told constantly that men and women are all the same. This is just a social contract. Yet the precise moment where relationships between men and women took a nosedive was women seeing sex as a casual, no strings attached affair, right? We're just equalizing the power field. All men are pigs. We're just acting like men. And of course, that is not true. But however, from college campuses to nation boardrooms, women have learnt to pursue sex with no commitment and are getting burnt. The so-called campus rape crisis, Me Too, Just Like Men, and of course, it's all sex regret, right? Women have proved in spades, time and time again, no matter what they say or what they do, as soon as they got a baby in their arms, they no longer want to be just like men. Now, the problem is, while many want to be around for their child, they've created themselves a trap, an economic and social trap of being the single mother, and many ultimately are forced back to work too soon and creating a emotional crisis amongst women. A father's reaction is to support financially. However, men cannot solely provide, nor, if you lose your job, can you maintain your family and your family home. Most people can't even go a month without income. This is again, of course, instead of freeing men and women from the burdens of society, feminism has done exactly the opposite. It has created a trap in which we now see, not just in America, not just in Australia or New Zealand or the UK, but in most of the world now, a decline in civilization itself. We are watching the decline of civilization just because of Gloria Steinem. And the reality is, the backlash is going to be horrific. We're already seeing the signs of backlash against society, revenge on the society attacks in China. For those who don't know, the Chinese Communist Party weaponized women against the Chinese. They marched 1 million women on Beijing, and rather than fighting them, they surrendered. And those Mao's warriors were protected. And over the years, you had cultural revolutions, purges, and of course what they called the phenomenon of the Hague. This is the Hague mob. Old women who would raid fields, even ripping seedlings out of the ground, doing what they please, stealing from stores, not paying their bills, being trash, general trash. All right. So you don't understand that feminism is how destructive feminism can be because you haven't seen the worst of it yet. The biological line number 3. The biological clock isn't real. Now, the ideal age for a woman allegedly is 25. However, you were told, not just by Gloria Steinem and others, you were told by major corporations that men are postponing marriage. Don't worry, women can too. Right? So, instead of marrying their peers or marrying older men who are more financially stable, women decided to opt out of and freeze their eggs and go for the cash careers. Yet 22 years later, they're finding out that they can't unfreeze them. You were sold a lie. And worse, You paid for it financially. Now you're paying for it with your worthless careers, because now there's no one to fund your retirement. So as the debt grows higher, more and more women are going to face an uncertain future because they have to sell their country to foreign interests to pay their debts. Quite literally, boomers, millennials have, right from successive generations, have robbed the Treasury blind and now acquiring more and more debt, predominantly women who always constantly demand and vote for these socialist programs, free housing, free healthcare, job subsidies, and all these other programs, right? Where we have too many people working, we are overproducing. This overproduction is funded by the government, where they buy new off. Look at the difference between red states, blue states in America, right? Blue states are buying up to $6 billion in extra goods a year from Amazon, just to keep Amazon floating. It's subsidies, right? Subsidizing Amazon delivery, calling it keeping jobs. Jobs are more important than people. But profit, you're stealing, right? That's debt that you're stealing from other people. But you can't convince a feminist that the biological clock ain't real, that all their pie-in-the-sky socialist programs are nothing but theft. And the majority don't want to stand up to women. So women lie to women. Feminists get what they want. That is for women to reject maternal desires, and become sexual objects of the lesbian class, right? The rich lesbian class who run feminism, right? Ultimately, it is about the rejection of everything you are to become something you're not. A sex toy. They tell you that men turn you into a sex toy, right? Every time they accuse, right? Every accusation by the left is a confession. Feminists have told you what they want. Sex toys, right? Meanwhile, you have Jane Fonda chasing younger and younger men. You have Madonna chasing younger men. She can afford $1 million to have a artificial child with some man. You can't. This is what they do. They steal by you not having children, right? Those resources that would have gone to your children now go to them. And, right? You think, right? You stop and think for a moment. If you are not overpaying, right? If you are not, right? If you go out and say and buy a book, right? How many billionaire authors are there? How many multi-million-dollar authors are there? There aren't that many, right? Most authors earn less than $10,000 a year. But musicians? Look at all the multi-million-dollar musicians. Look at, some of them have a career of less than 10 years and they have a $50 million mansion in less than 10 years. So you complain about the price of a book at $3.99 as or $4.99 or $7.99, but you'll buy hundreds of songs for 99 cents each and not think for a minute, right, that you're not being overcharged. Your priorities are so screwed up. But from culturally and economically, you've been bombarded to support musicians, to support feminists, to blindly support politicians. The rest of society, you are cutting out. So you're basically destroying the cultural heart, right? They keep talking about diversity, but you are destroying the very tapestry of diversity. That is separate nations with their separate identities and separate populations. That's true diversity. Throwing everybody into a boiling pot and melting it, that is not diversity. You have been sold and re-educated over and over and over again into cultural Marxism. And you are now genociding yourselves so that Gloria Steinem can have her economic power, right? Because without the excess money, right, without kids, there is now an excess money in the treasury that they can use to through NGOs to siphon off to themselves, and then get you to borrow more and more money, right, for these never-ending pursuits of programs. So you're overspending, overproducing, overworked, and for what? You have no reward. You have no family. You have no friends. Feminists aren't friends with each other. They're economic and political rivals for power and attention. Because the older and older you get, the more and more you are competing for the rich men, of which there's fewer and fewer and fewer. So, and of course, then that's leading you into the arms of rich women, which is exactly what the feminists want. But even then, you're facing the fact that the majority of them don't care about you. You're disposable. Just look at the divorce rate amongst lesbians. Look at the rising abuse. Look at the rising crime. It's women are the number of women being abused is up. True, but you're not looking at who is doing the abusing. Right? Women are taking out their anger and frustrations on each other. They are murdering each other at a much higher rate than you were allegedly being murdered just by men. And then it turns out that statistic was a lie, because they never mentioned how many women were murdered by women back in the 60s and 70s. It was always just assumed it was always the husband. And sometimes so many men were railroaded just in Britain alone. Recently they secretly admitted they paid out secretly millions in compensation to men wrongfully jailed for allegedly murdering their wife. With no investigation. It was just always assumed. So maybe even some of them were guilty, but because they were never investigated. This is the problem with politics, particularly feminism, is that it is built on assumptions. And the biggest assumption is the biological clock isn't real. Yet everybody knows about menopause, yet feminists deny it as some sort of a conspiracy by men. You think Madonna naturally had a child at 55? I got some Chinese land to sell you. Now, lie 4. A career is more meaningful than marriage and children. This is the biggest of all the lies the feminists could tell you, is that career success is more fulfillment. So being a slave for 9 to 10 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, is somehow better for you than being a mother for a few hours a day. True, you're a mother always. But the depth of the lie did not begin in the 60s. But Betty Freeman, isn't it amazing? The coincidences and the noticing, right? The little hats every time have sold you on lies. You look at them. How many of these leading Jewish, they all got families, they all got children, they all got husbands. Right? They sold you. And Betty Freeman hit you hard by saying that being a wife and a mother was akin to being in a comfortable concentration camp. and American women have been walloped with a steady diet of words and images that drove the argument home, and yet the reality is, over time, women have been getting sadder, more women today take antidepressants than any time in history. Women's self-deletion is through the roof. Since mothering is no longer revered or encouraged, women are surprised to discover how heart-wrenching it is to leave their babies and return to work, and discovering that work is not as satisfying as they were led to believe. Yet any woman speaking out is not seen as a person talking from a personal experience, rather than that she's somehow been kidnapped by men and brainwashed. Women have been lied to for so long that their pride cannot let them break out of the cycle of self-loathing. Their greed, they think that if they give up their job, that they'll somehow miss out on this magical wealth of retirement. You look at most retired men, they don't make it 4 years. They could have $1 million, $1 billion. It doesn't matter, right? All that wealth they accumulate for retirement is worthless. You don't live to enjoy it. You don't have a meaningful life retired. All that money that people save by not having children did not cover their medical bills. They sit lonely in old folks' home. All they do is go out and protest. They have no life. Their careers mean nothing. Nobody misses them. Their work, as soon as they got too old to work, they got replaced by a foreigner who has a happy family. You have been sold so many lies, but sadly, the vast majority would rather sit in a dark room alone than admit they're wrong. Than admit that Betty Freeman deliberately lied so that for the sake of her and her people, because they are a cancer, and you won't admit that they are a cancer. That they spread lies and they abuse you constantly and laugh behind your back. If you don't believe me, read the Epstein's files. Over 400 times they called you cattle and fools for believing their lies. Right? There have been Epstein was motivated by hate, not some sickness. He hated white people and he took his anger out on their children. And people of his people of his tribe covered it up on multiple levels in government, time and time again, until it couldn't be covered up anymore. And now the cover-up is to stop the backlash against the tribe. Yes, the tribe who screams ouch every time they punch you, screams ouch every time they sell you a lie. But the 4 biggest lies of feminism come from 2 Jewish activists. Lie 1. Remember, women don't mean men. 2. Men and women are the same. 3. The biological clock isn't real. 4. A career is more meaningful than marriage and children. Yet everywhere you look, you see, who is the only one where the marriage rate is up, the child rate is up, and the finances are up? Who dominates your universities? Who funds all these research projects and takes the technology? So even if your kids go on to university and invent something, it's taken off them. Time and time again, feminism has lied. But the lure of gold and the false promises, right? You become an actress, don't have children, and you will have a career. And where are they now? Where are those careers now? How many actresses walked away because all they found was, how many times do you have to hear about the people who dominated Hollywood abusing women and children and getting away with it? Feminism has never gone after Hollywood. Harvey Weinstein, right? That was just an anomaly, right? He was the sacrificial lamb. And the case against him, well, all the women, they gave themselves to him, so all their arguments were null and void, right? If they did not want to be sexually abused, then they shouldn't have agreed to be sexually abused. They literally agreed, right? And then again, you hear about how Oprah brought women to Harvey Weinstein and no repercussions. So you think feminists would isolate her and stop buying her goods and stop watching her show? No, oh, Oprah, you're such an amazing woman, such a great businesswoman. There is such a cultural, economic, social disconnect where the words coming out of feminist mouth don't match their actions. And yet the vast majority of women out there just seem to think the cultural message matters, to follow the crowd. Yet those who lead the crowd do not live the lifestyles they demand of you. So many women are afraid of men, yet have never had a relationship with one. They don't know anything about men other than what they heard from feminists. So what happens? The first bad boy they run into, the first interesting character, the one with the motorcycle or the drug dealer at some party, they end up in a one-night stand, have a child with, or go out and have a child with a African American to prove how they're not racist, or many other numbers, right? The cliches of single women ending up single mothers, right? Tattoos, septum ring, and never-ending protests. By 35, they're suffering from fatigue, depression, right? They're overworked, underpaid, right? And yet their debts, they cannot manage the money. So there's no financial independence, right? They cannot fathom, right, that this is because they're believing lies, right? Because they suffer from missing out syndrome, right? Where they see, oh, someone's got better shoes than me, or they see the boss wearing, so they want, they see a movie like Devil Wears Prada, so they think, oh, if I dress like Anne Hathaway, I too will suddenly become a runaway success. Or if I talk like Jane Fonda, I'll become as rich and famous as Jane Fonda. So, while there are many other lies, they are the product of four major lies. Men fall into this trap too. Men fall into the trap that they do not need other men. Most people, right, don't fail to realize we are pack animals, and as a pack, we hunt better as a pack, we work better as a pack, we achieve more as a pack. 2, men fail to recognize that we're not the same, right? But when we organize into a hierarchy, we achieve better. When we have a clear direction, and if something goes wrong, yes, we have to go right. The leader is the leader. All in favour of ousting the leader, and therefore the pack reorganises. Men fail to realise as we get older, we slow down. That's why we need and succeed as a pack. We can turn to the wisdom of our elders, right? And career, right? We place our hyper-competitive nature. We so often undermine each other and fail to help each other at critical stages, and therefore our pack falls apart, right? But men are far better at cooperation. Men are far better at collaboration, right? It's a difference, right? Cooperation, right? One-on-one, right? You have 2 people working on the same project. You collaborate, but you collaborate and go your separate ways. So there is a bit of a nuance there that really doesn't matter in the long run. The main thing is, when you have an opportunity to work with someone, make it meaningful. Make it count. Because you'll walk away with an experience, and when other people come to you to work with you, and they lift you up, and you lift them up, they go on to lift up others, right? So your career, right, while we're still in that stage of overworked, underpaid, yes, a career, outside life suffers, but in our non-career life, we do better, right, to cooperate and lift each other up, right? And I'm not talking about spending every weekend with the same group of men, watching the same group of sports, and drinking the same beers and passing out on the couch. I'm talking about when you have something meaningful. Instead of hiring a contractor, all these things that men used to do, right? To build, to create, to fix. And you'd be surprised. The skills are still out there. And you will not be disappointed when you have meaningful cooperation and collaboration on projects. Meaningful, right? You've got to mean it, right? And you won't fall. And you watch, men do soar solo. That is correct. Men can and do soar solo. Men can succeed without women. Shamefully, women have not accepted they cannot succeed without men. They try, but you notice they form packs, right? And there's always a attempt, and often it's short term, and often, right? How many long-term female-only businesses have there been? How many last, right? Whereas men go on to build great things. I think too many women map out their lives on the sole basis that they heard from a friend, or they see the individual who succeeded because they're so famous, but they don't know how they got famous. So they assume. And when you assume, you make huge mistakes, right? You really think Jane Fonda succeeded on her own? She was chosen because she was the daughter of Henry Fonda. Right? She was singled out and elevated for so that she could be a tool of social manipulation. She sold her soul for money, allowed herself to be a sex toy of rich men so that she could have it all. But does she? Meaningful lives come from doing meaningful things. Now, yes, making a movie can be meaningful. Making music can be meaningful. But remember, they don't do it on their own. Billie Eilish, her brother wrote all her music. Jane Fonda, how many of her movies were written and directed by men? Be realistic in your analysis. Be humble in your approach. And instead of second guessing, let's start getting into the habit of double checking. And I'm pretty sure the more you fact check and the more you look into any pursuit or hobby, no matter what you do, you will succeed more with caution, patience, and a little bit of skepticism than rushing in, bull charging straight for that open gate, thinking you're going to be able to run for miles. Yeah. And the farmer will find you under the nearest tree exhausted. So, feminism has destroyed society. Whether you like it or not, the governments have betrayed us, right? Because the glutton, the lust, the wrath, and the greed, they rule this world. All we could do is try to make the best of it in our short time, because like the proverbial bull who's run through that gate, they're collapsing. Billionaires are dying off. They're not living long lives. The few are, but most of them not. You know, it's shameful, but there is no justice in this world for the horrid, because they always get others to do their dirty work. And politicians don't like accountability, just like feminism. But hopefully, I've armed you with some tools to realize what is going on and how to navigate and make the best of the situation you may be in. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, or in my profile. Of course, you can scan the QR code on the screen. See you in the next video, and bye for now.